The story of Matthew the tax collector is read quite often on Saturdays throughout the year in its different versions in the three synoptic Gospels. And there's one notable difference between the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospels of Luke and Mark. In the Gospel of Mark and the Gospel of Luke, we hear about Levi, the tax collector, who is called by the Lord. But in the Gospel of Matthew, he calls himself, rather, since he's the author, he calls himself Matthew. He uses the name by which he was known in the apostolic community. And here you see how the difference between how we are to approach our own faults and how we are to approach the faults of our brothers. Most people in the community at the time when the Gospels were written would not be aware of the fact that Levi was Matthew. And so when Mark and Luke are recalling this story, they wish to bring to attention the mercy of God and this story of repentance, but they do not wish to shame their fellow apostles for his past, and so they use his old name Levi as opposed to using his current name Matthew. Whereas Matthew, when writing about himself, doesn't wish to hide his own faults by using a name with which others were not familiar, but almost as an act of confession, he announces to the world through his gospel the depth of his former sin. Because tax collectors at that time, they were not simply people collecting money legitimately from the government. One, they were traitors working for the Roman occupiers against their own people, and two, usually they used their authority to extort money and to steal from their own people. So they were both traitors and thieves, which is why they're used so many times in the Gospels as examples of sinfulness. And he makes no attempt to hide it, because for him the confession of his own former misery is a confession of the Lord's abundant mercy and patience and love for him. And we can also see from the story that Christ does not call him after he is had second doubts about what he's doing, or after he's removed himself from this place of sin, but he calls him as he is sitting at the tax office. And so for us, this is a reminder during Lent that there is no point at which we are too far gone. There is no point at which the Lord cannot call us. It may be that we struggle to respond to the call of Christ because of where we have placed ourselves. But even in the depths of our sin, even in the depths of our faults, we must never give up hope, because Christ will call us where we are. Even at our lowest, even at our most sinful, even at our most broken, that is where the Lord will call us. And if we respond as Matthew did, then we can immediately follow Christ. It doesn't say that he agonized, it doesn't say that he hesitated, it doesn't say that he spent some time to finish off unfinished business. He immediately left the tax office and he followed Christ. And spiritual life, in theory, could be that simple. When we talk about spiritual struggle, and when we talk about this spiritual struggle of Lent, we are not fighting to earn the favor of God. We are not fighting to change the mind of God. We are not fighting to earn something. We are fighting, and we are not fighting against God. We are fighting against ourselves. Christ, from the moment he calls us, he gives us everything we need to follow him. And he has, through his incarnation, through his passion, through his death, through his resurrection, through his ascension, through all of his works of salvation, he has loosed the shackles by which we were bound. He has broken all the chains that fettered us to death and to corruption and to sin. He has freed us from that slavery. He has opened the door to the prison. The question is whether or not we have enough faith and we trust him enough to follow him through that door. He has loosed the shackles, but we are still holding on to the chains. And so spiritual struggle is convincing ourselves essentially that it's worth letting go of this former slavery which we have become so familiar with, and although it pains us and hurts us and causes us to essential misery, we still feel a sense of comfort in that sinful state. And essentially what imprisoned us before and what continues to imprison us is doubt about the Paschal message, doubt about the fact that Christ has risen from the dead and has trampled down death by death. It says in the Philippians that it was through the fear of death that the devil had held us bondage. Because if a person has this sense of his own mortality, that life will come to an end, and he doesn't trust in this notion of eternity, everything spiritual will essentially seem futile, will seem like it's a waste of this life, and simultaneously even worldly things seem pointless. And so he traps himself in this state of sin. And if you look deep enough, every mistake you've ever made, every sin you've ever committed, every betrayal, every doubt, every moment of sorrow ultimately comes from this doubt about whether or not Christ indeed has broken the power of death and given us life eternal. If we truly live as if from the vantage point of eternity, sin no longer makes sense. And so there is no reason for us to hold on to these shackles. There is no reason for us not to get up immediately as Matthew did and follow Christ and to leave sin behind us. And Christ tells us that my burden is easy and my yoke is light. Christ does not burden us with his call to salvation. So spiritual life is not something burdensome, it's not something heavy, it's not something difficult by its own nature. The difficulty in spiritual life is that struggle against ourselves because we refuse to let go, we refuse to trust him, we refuse to follow him. And this is also why the church, especially on Saturdays, celebrate the martyrs, and why we say that the blood of the martyrs is the foundation and the bedrock of the church, because the martyr, which means witness, the thing he is witnessing to, the thing he is bearing witness to, is eternity. He is the person who has come to believe in the fact that Christ is risen from the dead and by death trampled down death, and to those in the tombs gave life, to such an extent that they were willing to lay aside their lives happily, willingly, for the sake of eternity, without any doubt. And this is a truly free person. And so we are not all called to die as martyrs. That is a glory reserved for very few people and only in certain times in history. But every choice we make and every thought we think should nonetheless be an imitation of the mentality and the belief of the martyrs. We should imitate those who live in and for eternity, and not those who are imprisoned by the devil through the fear of death. So when Christ calls us, even at our lowest moment, even at our most sinful, even at our most broken, place your faith in the Paschal message that Christ has destroyed the binding power of death, that life eternal awaits us, and then that embracing of the truth will be simple and will be easy, as it was for Matthew.